Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Report. My name is Bharath Ganesh, and I'll be taking a look at the stories that matter to you. We'll be discussing news from throughout the week and the ones that you've all been talking about. On The Report, we'd love to hear what you think and for you to join in on the conversation. Get tweeting using #TheReport. Later on in the program, we'll be going through the topics that have been trending throughout the week. But before we get into the conversation, let's have a quick look at some of the latest news.
Interpol has issued a wanted persons alert for British Muslim Samantha Lethwaite. The alert has come at Kenya's request, but has no mentioning of a suspected role in the Nairobi Mall attack. Lethwaite is wanted by Kenya on charges of possession of explosives and conspiracy to commit a felony, dating back to December 2011. She is thought to have left Britain several years ago. British police have cited Lethwaite as a possible suspect in last week's siege of a Nairobi shopping mall by Somalia's Al-Shabaab movement. The four-day mall attack killed at least 67 people. Interpol have declined to say when Kenya lodged its request for the alert. Ending weeks of diplomatic deadlock, the United States and Russia have agreed on a UN Security Council draft resolution. The resolution will demand that Syria gives up its chemical arms, but the agreement does not threaten military force if the Syrian government fails to comply.
You'll hear much more about the draft when it is actually going to be adopted, but let me say that we believe that it is something which is working very pragmatically and strongly in support of this effort of the elimination of chemical weapons in Syria, in support of the role, a very important role, which is going to be played in that work by the Organization on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons.
The agreement emerged from intense negotiations at the United Nations, averting American strikes on Assad's forces in the midst of the nation's bloody civil war. A civil war which has left more than 100,000 people dead. Egyptian authorities have shut down the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice newspaper in Cairo. This is the latest move aimed at crushing the Islamic movement. Police stormed the building earlier this week and removed all contents. The raid followed Monday's court ruling banning the Brotherhood and ordering its funds seized. The army overthrew elected Muslim Brotherhood President Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's first elected president in July. The party has so far seen hundreds of its members killed and thousands arrested. Russia's senior Islamic clerics have warned the country's leaders that unrest may erupt if a court decision ordering the destruction of an interpretive translation of the Quran was not overturned. A court has ruled that a widely read text should be outlawed under the Russian anti-extremism law. The Council of Muftis have sounded the alarm in an open letter this morning to President Putin. Clashes have continued throughout the week in Bangladesh as garment workers staged a week-long protest. The £13 billion industry has been under the spotlight after a series of deadly incidents, including the collapse of a building housing factories in April, which killed more than 1,000 people. The government is currently in talks with unions and factory owners on a new minimum wage. Bangladesh last increased its minimum garment worker pay in late 2010. About 50,000 garment industry workers participated in the protest this week. The leader of Myanmar's opposition Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi has said that reconciliation is needed between the military and political groups, and not just between ethnic groups, for the country to move forward. She spoke on a four-day visit to Singapore, emphasising that dialogue with ethnic groups was not the only sort of discussion needed in Myanmar.
We put national reconciliation at the centre of our aspirations. And by national reconciliation, we did not simply mean reconciliation between the ethnic nationalities of Burma, as a lot of people seem to imagine, but reconciliation between the military regime and those who wanted democracy.
Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won a landslide victory in last year's parliamentary by-elections, giving her a seat in parliament. Myanmar has been suffering from ethnic divisions between the Buddhist population and the Muslim Rohingya. Muslims have long suffered from persecution in this region. Over 150,000 people have been left homeless, and official figures indicate at least 237 fatalities. Yasmin Khatun, reporting for Islam Channel's report.
With me to discuss some of these stories are Ruhul Tarafdar from Children's Plus and Sam Maher from Labour Behind the Label. Later in the program, we'll be speaking to Shaynal Khan from the London Muslim Centre and Glyn Robbins from United East End. Now, Ruhul, I would like to start with you. Do you agree with Aung San Suu Kyi about reconciliation as a priority between the military and political groups over reconciliation between ethnic groups?
Well, I think reconciliation on all levels is important, but in terms of the states of the Rohingya refugees, I mean, currently they have no citizenship within Burma. So I think that has to be if you're talking about reconciliation, I think it has to begin with, communities such as that. I mean, the Rohingya, they are not allowed to buy land. They're not allowed. They have to sign commitments that they're not going to have more than 2 children. They have to have very limited travel restrictions. They have to sign documents when they want to travel and get permission and so on. So I think the way that they are treated in that country, forgetting the atrocities that has been committed against them, even a few weeks ago when hundreds of Rohingya had to leave their villages, where they was again attacked by fundamentalist Buddhist monks. And this has been going on now for quite some time. And the UN describes the Rohingya as the one of the most persecuted minorities on earth. And it's not for without reason that they've been given that label. Right. I spent some time in the camps in Bangladesh, in Kutupalong and Noyapara, where there's about 30,000 Rohingya refugees living, and it's absolutely atrocious, the conditions that they're in, and they are, one of the forgotten people on this earth, and it's really a tragedy, what they're having to endure as a people.
Right. So moving on, because there's so much of this flow into Bangladesh, and we also have instability in Bangladesh as well due to the garment workers. Sam, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the situation of garment workers, what they're trying to achieve, and why they're out into the streets.
I mean, I think in the last 6 months, suddenly the plight of Bangladesh's garment workers has really hit the world's media, and it's good to finally see the world waking up to their situation. And for years now, the largely female workforce in Bangladesh that makes the clothes that we all wear every day have been living in horrendous conditions, earning poverty wages, working 12 to 15-hour days, and not being able to take advantage of being able to get employment to really improve their lives for themselves, their families and their children. And the reason we see the garment workers out on the streets this week is because the frustration of constantly living in poverty and that constant exhaustion of having to work so many long hours and not having a voice, not having a way to speak out and get their voices recognised, I think has boiled over onto the streets. And right now they're trying to demand an increase to the minimum wage from 3,000 taka a month to 8,000 taka a month, which sounds like a massive increase, but our estimate is that for a garment worker to earn a genuine living wage, it would have to be around 10 to 12,000 taka a month. So even with that increase, they won't be earning a living wage. Mm-hmm. And if Bangladesh wants to maintain a stable garment industry that actually contributes to the development of all its people, then this is a vital thing for the government to decide now, is to increase the wages of garment workers so they can live in dignity.
Can you tell us a little bit about, from the perspective of us in the West, what can we do to kind of work with and be in solidarity with those people in Bangladesh?
I mean, I think the first thing that we have to recognise, or that we have to understand as consumers, is that behind everything we buy, whether it's a computer or a jumper, there's human beings that have been involved in making that product, and recognising that they want exactly the same things we want, and recognising that those needs are really important. And so as consumers, we have to not just buy whatever we think we want, that, and believe all these adverts and shiny things that are out there. The reality of what we're buying is that human beings are making those products, and we have a real connection with them. And I think recognising the humanity of these workers is a really massive first step. I think secondly, we need to make it really clear to the industry that we don't want to tolerate this anymore. We don't want to think that every time we wear a jumper we've got someone else's blood on our hands, and we can make that clear. We can write to the companies that we buy our products from, we can take part in actions, we can talk to our politicians, we can organise within our mosques and our churches to really raise these issues, and we know that it makes a difference. In the weeks after Rana Plaza, when the people around the world were in outcry, we finally saw a real change with the signing of a Bangladesh Fire and Safety Accord that's brought the world's major retailers together with the unions to actually stop making those factories safe. So we know that it can help.
That's a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Now, Ruhul, could you speak a little bit about the situation for garment workers in Myanmar?
I know that Myanmar is starting to put itself in the market as being a new destination for producing garments. Maybe they've learnt some of the lessons from the issues that have taken place in Bangladesh, and they're trying to do something to make sure that they don't have the same problems. But, you know, to be honest, I find whether it's Bangladesh or Cambodia or India, whatever, the pressure is from these retailers that want very cheap prices. So until there are changes made, you know, from what the actual manufacturers want, it will be very difficult to bring change for people. I mean, you have the condition of subcontracting in Bangladesh, where companies often will, you know, make a deal with company A, but company A then goes to B, C, D, and E, who have absolutely no standards or anything. But in order to fulfill those contracts, you know, all of the standards go out of the window, and you have the situation of Rana Plaza.
And Sam, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how these standards work in Burma versus Bangladesh.
And I think, you know, Burma's very recently been opened up to, you know, to being allowed to export to Europe and the US. So the industry there is very fledgling. At the moment, our understanding from the limited information we have is the conditions are pretty appalling. But I think that with Burma, we've got a real opportunity not to repeat the mistakes that were made in Bangladesh. We're like rushing in and, you know, expanding an industry massively without any of those companies actually investing properly. I think those companies now looking to invest in Burma have got the opportunity. They're kind of starting from scratch. They can go in there, they can invest money, they can make sure that buildings are put together that are purpose-built, that are safe. They can work with the unions that are also very fledgling but very active in Burma. There's a lot of strikes, there's a lot of worker organising going on in Burma. So I think, you know, Burma is a real opportunity for us to see that things can be done differently, and if they are done differently, I think the garment industry presents a real opportunity for development in Burma.
Okay, thank you.